Oh, hello, you spectacular entrepreneur. Have you ever heard the saying that it's your network that determines your net worth? Or the other one is, it's not what you know, but who you know that will determine how far you go? Well, there is actually quite a lot of truth to these sayings, and there's a reason why growing your network is seen as such an important part of being a business owner. Especially in the online business space, we can see huge differences in the results that you achieve depending on how big your network is. I mean, really, your audience is part of your network. So your network isn't just made up of peers and mentors. Technically, your audience or the people that follow you are also part of your network. And so when it comes to building an online business, something that can fast track those results is having a great network. But these days, with a lot of advice on social media strategy and networking involving being an unwanted and unwelcome intruder into people's DMs or sending cold friend requests to people that don't even know who you are, it can feel like the way to network online feels far more intrusive and invasive, or that it relies on you bypassing people's consent and doing stuff that feels ultimately uncomfortable. In today's episode of the Heart Centre Business Podcast, I want to share with you how to network as an online business owner and what I have found has been really helpful for me, being someone who really values a consent-based approach and does not want to go around friend requesting strangers, but also through the lens of how to ensure that you're growing your network in a way that is going to be effective for growing your business as well. So this is episode number 381 of the Heart Centre Business Podcast. If you would like to access the show notes from today's episode, you can do so at tashcorbin.com/381. And you're definitely going to want to do that because this is also the first day of Tashmas. So let's dive in. I'm Tash Corbin, and this is the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. Before we dive into the juicy content of today's episode, I want to first and foremost say Happy Tashmas! So for those of you who are unaware, every year, twice a year, I run the 12 days of Tashmas. I run it from the 1st to the 12th of December, and that is Christmas Tashmas, where we are in the lead up to finishing up for the end of the year. So I usually finish working around the 15th, 16th of December. So from the 1st to the 12th of December, I run Tashmas. And then also it is my birthday on the 12th of March. And so this is birthday Tashmas. So from the 1st until the 12th of March, every day I'm going to be releasing a new podcast episode. These are audio only podcasts in which I give a strategy or a tip or some tips to help you to grow your business. Plus, every day there is a Tashmas gift. That might be a giveaway or a competition. It could be a free resource, or it could be a special offer that's only available over the Tashmas period. Now, previously, over the last few years, Tashmas has involved a daily Facebook Live. However, my last Tashmas in December 2023 showed me that it was time to bring it back to the podcast. So I previously used to run Tashmas as podcast episodes daily, and we ended up moving it over to being daily Facebook Lives several years ago when Facebook Lives were given a lot of priority and were getting lots and lots of beautiful cold reach on Facebook. And also at a time where I was learning to do Facebook Lives more consistently, and it felt like a really good opportunity for me to just practice hosting a live stream because they are a very different thing from pre-recorded content. However, there are a few reasons why I've decided to bring Tashmas back to the podcast. One of those reasons is that in December Tashmas last year, I ended up contracting COVID. And because of that, I wasn't able to do the Facebook Lives on the right days. I ended up having to do catch-up videos. And also because I get quite distracted by all the comments and I love hosting that live space and discussing it and answering people's questions live, a lot of the Tashmas videos ended up going for over an hour. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but when it comes to the algorithm on Facebook, long form Facebook Lives are not great for cold audience reach. And it makes sense. If someone doesn't know who I am, seeing a 1.5 hour video from me is not going to make them very excited to watch it because it feels like it's just huge. And so what it ends up doing is actually really damaging and reducing my overall reach on Facebook. And normally that's totally fine because I do Tashmas in December right before I'm taking time off anyway, or I do it in March and I generally take the week after my birthday off as well. And so previously it hasn't really been a big deal that it's reduced my reach consistently, but now I'm getting to the point where I really want to make sure that I nurture that ongoing reach. And also, because I'm not being distracted by questions and comments and all of the conversations that are happening while I'm live, I'll be able to do these episodes much faster. So it's more time efficient for you to consume this content. It's better for my reach on social media if I don't do it this way. And also, I'm able to record these podcast episodes in a much snappier and shorter format. So I'm also getting the information across way more effectively. So if you have any questions about that, please do make sure that you get in touch. I think that it's important that I gave you all of that insight as well, because something that happens quite a lot is a lot of people actually reach out and say, I'm doing my own version of Tashmas, and they make assumptions about why I do it and what impact it has on my business. And for them, they actually would be better off not doing something like Tashmas, especially not doing it as a series of Facebook Lives. So I thought it was great to give that insight for you, because a lot of people make assumptions about why I do certain things that I do in my business, and they assume that it's going to be great for their business as well. And a lot of the times it's not. I'm doing it for other reasons. Another example of that is hosting the Heart-Centered Soul-Driven Entrepreneurs Facebook community. People think that I do that because I get better reach within a Facebook group, but that's not true. People think that I do that because I use it as a big part of my marketing strategy, and that's actually not true. So I think it's always helpful if I unpack some of the reasons behind different strategies so that it's not creating assumptions about what is good for or what I would recommend for other people's businesses. Now, the final thing I want to say about Tashmas is that, again, we are going to do a mega draw. So every day as part of Tashmas, there'll be a post over on my social media, and you'll be able to comment on that or answer a question over there or enter a prize draw or something like that. And every time you interact with Tashmas, or follow the instructions on one of the days, you will actually get entries into our mega draw. In the mega draw, I will be giving out some CEO stationery kits, some beautiful prize packs. I've got some VIP sessions with me and other amazing prizes. So the more of the Tashmas podcast episodes that you listen to and then take the follow-up action, the more entries in the mega draw you will get. Now, as I said, I'm also offering some special offers that are only available during Tashmas. Every purchase of one of those offers will also get you bonus entries into the mega draw. So I don't have a paid offer that I'm sharing with you today, but I do have one for tomorrow. And if you purchase that one during Tashmas, it actually gets you 12 bonus entries. So there's some really juicy opportunities for you to not only grab a bargain because I'm doing a special offer, but if you purchase during Tashmas, it will also get you extra entries into that mega draw, and you might just win yourself a VIP package with me as well. If you have any questions about any of that, you're welcome to email. I'm support@tashcorbin.com, or send a DM to me on social media. All right, so let's dive into today's episode. It'll be a little longer because we've spent the first few minutes going through what Tashmas is, But these podcast episodes, I'm aiming to keep the rest of them under that 30-minute mark so that they're really efficient and a great opportunity for you to learn a new strategy or look at some things differently without it taking up a huge chunk of your day. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about networking. It may come as a surprise to you that I actually don't love networking. It's not my favorite thing. And even though I'm an extrovert, I do find it challenging sometimes to strike up conversations with strangers when there's no real reason for it or like I'm just doing it for conversation's sake. If I am traveling on a plane, for example, I'm not the person who chats to the person next to them just naturally. I get a little awkward talking to strangers, despite the fact, as I said, I'm totally an extrovert. And so I particularly don't like networking just for networking's sake. Like, I've been to quite a few networking events in the past, and it's literally just networking. And I didn't really enjoy the experience. I didn't find it particularly helpful, and it was quite uncomfortable for me as well. I think part of that stems from this kind of belief that networking is a numbers game, right? That you can measure the success of your networking by measuring the number of business cards you handed out at an event or the number of business cards that you received. And in my corporate role prior to starting my own business, that was actually something we were measured on. I remember going to a conference and everyone had to report back how many business cards they had and how many people they met at the conference. And I only had a handful of business cards. I think I met like 5 or 6 people, but I had amazing in-depth conversations with those 5 or 6 people. And I was basically performance managed for it. I was told that I had underperformed, that I hadn't done my job properly, and it felt really uncomfortable. I felt like just going around the room and extracting business cards from strangers to just have them as trophies didn't really feel like the whole point. Anyway, that's a whole another story. But I also think that because of the way that networking can be measured or the way that networking has been done in the past, it can feel like you need to be like an invader of someone's space or an intruder in someone's space in order to be able to grow your network. And I don't like that. I don't like when my space is invaded or I have an intruder in my inbox that I didn't ask for. And so why would I enjoy being that person to other people? It feels icky. It feels ooh. And so you might then assume, hearing that I despise networking, especially networking for no reason other than growing your network, you then might be surprised to hear that I have a massive network. I am someone who does have a lot of people that I know. I remember when iPhones first came out and you couldn't get your iPhone screen replaced other than at an Apple store or by sending your phone away to Apple. And it was really expensive at the time, especially the first iPhones. But I knew someone who fixed Apple screens. And, you know, it's all those little things. Like, I just seem to always know someone who can help with a specific problem or a specific goal. And that's kind of been the case for me for quite a while. Now, I think the reason that I have a giant network is not because I enjoy networking for networking's sake. It's because I have found ways to befriend people or, you know, build my network that really work for me and feel unintrusive. And so I thought this would be a great topic for us to unpack in Tashmas, because I know that for a lot of other online business owners, it can be a very familiar feeling that you know it's important to grow your network. You know that it's important to build that referral network or that peer support network. And you may even feel really lonely as an online business owner, but the idea of just reaching out and befriending randoms doesn't feel great. And the idea of needing to be that uninvited intruder into someone's DMs or into their inbox also feels horrendous. And so you end up making that mean that you just have to accept it's going to be a lonely ride. And I don't think we need to accept that, but I also don't think that the answer is spamming people. So I have 5 little strategies that I wanted to share with you that I found really helpful, and hopefully they will help you to grow your network as well. The first strategy I want to share is that whenever I go to events that involve some sort of network growth or other people, I go with a giving focus rather than a receiving focus. And what I mean by that is that I don't go with the intention of growing my network so that I get more referrals. I don't think about what's in it for me. I'm not worried about what's in it for me. I'm not measuring the number of new friends that I've made. I'm not trying to target people in the room who I think are going to be most helpful for me. That makes me feel like I'm using people, or I'm misleading people, or I'm doing something deceptive in order to trick someone into being part of my network. And as someone who doesn't do that very well, I have a terrible poker face. I get a giant rash on my neck and face if I ever try and lie about anything or deceive someone. So it's not going to work very well. I don't like doing any of those sorts of things. So something that really helped me when I was first going to events where there was a networking component was to have a focus, like a very tangible focus of what I was going to look for in terms of what I could give. And I don't mean like, who can I help through selling them my packages, but who can I tangibly help there in the room, or tangibly help after the event by sending them clients, or by finding something that they need, helping them with something that they need for free without expectation, right? I go to these things through this lens of, okay, I'm going to find some people in the room that I can help. So as an extrovert, even though I do find it hard to strike up conversations with strangers sometimes, I know that it's even tougher for the introverts in the room and the shy, totally feeling awkward introverts in the room who are standing there with their little cup of tea thinking, I have no friends and I don't know what I'm doing here. I know how uncomfortable it is. So one of the things that I used to do when I was in corporate was I always would find who are the introverts in the room, and how can I take them under my wing and introduce them to a bunch of people so they don't feel so awkward? And so that's exactly what I'd do. I'd walk into a conference room or something along those lines, and I would look for the people standing on their own feeling awkward. I would look for the people that really looked uncomfortable or looked like they were really struggling, and I would go and take that step for them. It felt so much easier to strike up a conversation with them because I could feel like I was helping them by taking away that awkwardness. And so that's what I mean by having that really giving focus. These days, whenever I go to an event, whether it be my own conference or going to conferences, going to business events, I go to local Chamber of Commerce events these days as well. Whenever I step into any of those spaces, my number one focus is to find people that I can send clients to. So I'm stepping into that room, actively pursuing a tangible outcome that I can contribute to for other people's businesses. So it might be that I'm looking for people I can send people from my audience to, or that I could refer my local friends to, depending on who I'm meeting in the room. But that is my number one intention. What that means is that when I meet someone, I'm deeply invested in having a very solid understanding of their business, who they help, and how they help them. So if I meet someone and, I'm asked, the first question I'm going to ask is, tell me a little bit about your business. And they say, I'm a tax accountant. Then I'll say, wow, that's really fascinating. Do you work with people who have online businesses? So I'm asking very interested questions, and I'm giving them an opportunity to showcase themselves and their business. And so it makes them feel really comfortable and relaxed. It puts them in the spotlight. And it also, I'm not just asking questions for questions' sake. I'm asking questions with a very specific purpose. And the beautiful thing about that is that when you do that, often the other person asks similar questions of you anyway, so you do get a chance to talk about yourself. But I've been to events, honestly, where I've spoken to 15, 20 people, and I've hardly talked about my own business through that process, but because I've been so interested in the other person, because I've asked such great questions, because I've sent referrals off to those people in a lot of cases, then what ends up happening is we have a really good connection. And they end up going and researching my business or suggesting we catch up for a coffee later, or I've had people send me emails following networking events that physically say, hey, I realized I know nothing about you. Or I realized I spent the whole time talking about myself and I didn't ask you any questions about your business. And I'm really fascinated. I'd love to hear about it. And so because I haven't been attached to being in the spotlight or being the center of attention or informing every person in the room about my business, I actually have created far deeper connection. I felt far less awkward, and I've created connections that are actually going to stand the test of time. They're not just surface level. And I am someone who diligently sends clients to other people that I meet. I am someone who diligently looks to connect people. In my Sacred Money archetypes, I am a connector. That is my second top archetype. So it's no surprise. But I also think that it doesn't necessarily need to be something that comes naturally to you if you step into the space with that intention. So maybe that's something that you could experiment with, is seeing networking as your opportunity to grow other people's businesses or to find people that you could send referrals to. And in doing so, it just takes all of that pressure off. People are far more open with you. People are far more likely to ask you meaningful questions as well. But even if they don't, I think you end up with more deeper connections for your business, and that's always going to be a win. So I have no attachment to people sending me clients. I have no attachment to people eventually wanting to discover what my business is about. I really don't mind. I am happy to step into those spaces, be a great referrer, be very interested in other people's businesses with that lens of being a great referrer for them. And when I step away from those networking events, I always feel like it's been successful because I've achieved my goal. My goal doesn't rely on other people being interested in me. My goal doesn't rely on me being the center of attention or finding people who might be clients. My goal simply relies on me getting to know a bunch of different people's businesses. And the benefit to me is always spectacular. I've never once decided, you know what, that was a terrible idea to be focused on who I could send clients to. It's never happened. The second piece of advice that I have is that just because your business is online doesn't mean that all of your networking needs to be online as well. And I think that this can sometimes be very limiting for us. Because we are online business owners, we think that the most powerful or valuable networking we do is going to be online. But that's not necessarily always the case. And in fact, I find that some of my offline or in-person connections are far more valuable for me as a business owner or far more valuable for my business than a dozen online connections added together. So when I first started my business, I made it my intention and I set a goal of going to an in-person event every single month. And that was like usually a business breakfast or a networking event or an evening event or something along those lines. Usually the shorter things I'd do once a month. But I also set the intention of going to at least 2 conferences every single year that were for online business owners, and at least 1 event that was about me, not about the business. So I would go on like a retreat, or I'd go and do a 2-day workshop on flexibility and strength or something to do with my body, or I'd do like a mindfulness event. And so because I had that expectation and set that intention for myself as an extrovert, right, needed to be in the physical room with physical people, what I found was I ended up having far deeper connections with people because we're actually in real life together. And, you know, that sense of we've been in the room together, I recognize the person. I feel like I know people more when I've actually like met them. And also I think that being in the room, like just energetically, that like extra little bit of being in their presence, being able to like give someone a hug or shake someone's hand or see someone giggle, snort or something. It just creates for me a sense of a little bit more connection. Also, I love following up with a coffee date or following up with like a little reunion meetup with people that I meet at those in-person events. And so that we can really develop that relationship over time rather than just relying on meeting once in real life and then that's it. Or, if you're wholly and solely focusing your network growth online, then that doesn't necessarily create that same depth, I find, all of the time. And you're less likely to reconnect with those people because the connection wasn't necessarily like physical. So I do love going to offline networking events, even as an online business owner. And I still get a lot of referrals through that. I still build that network. But also, it means that I then start to see some familiar faces and then like you can tap into that sense of, well, I've got some people here that I know, so we can help introduce each other. We can expand that network together, which is a really lovely thing to do. I also find that we're far more likely to do things like, let's all meet at the library and do some co-working or, let's all meet up again for like a half-day little masterminding session to talk about our goals or whatever it might be. And I really, really love those sorts of things. So don't make the assumption that all of your networking needs to be done online simply because your business is operated online. The third piece of advice I would have, or strategy that really worked for me, was I don't really go to events that are just about networking. I go to events that have another purpose as well. So it might be that I'm going to the event to learn something or hear from a speaker, or I'm going to the event to get something done, like going to like a co-working event or a workshop where I'm going to work on something. I went to a photography workshop a few months ago where I was learning how to take great photos with my mobile phone for my business. And so really the intention of the event was to go and capture a ton of photos. And I did that and I grew my network. And so because we're all there for some other purpose, some other common purpose, I just find that a little less confronting as an event to go to, because even if I go to an event without the intention of like, I'm going to go out and give out business cards to dozens of people, and I go with the intention of helping others, I still find if the only purpose of the event is networking, I still find it feels just awkward. And I feel like the way that people approach you is different. I don't know. It just doesn't feel the same to me. So what I do instead is I go to events where the focus is on learning or doing something. So it might be conferences where there's speakers I'm interested in, or going to workshops where we're all working on something together, or retreats, something along those lines. And the networking growth is a beautiful byproduct of going to that event. I just find that when I go to events where it's purely about networking, the way people approach me is different. They're approaching me through the lens of, I'm here to meet people so I can grow my business, so what can I get out of you? Rather than they are having a conversation with me about what we just learned, or, really getting to know me for me. And so I just find that where I go to events that there is a focus other than just pure networking, I actually get better networking results. So that is a great way to take the pressure off. If you don't feel like going and talking to strangers, it's going to be fine. And there's value beyond who did I meet and how can they help me? So it keeps you in that mindset of when I meet new people, how can I help them? And stops you from getting into that sort of desperation energy, or just having the people there be in that desperation energy about what they're going to get out of the event. Now, the next piece of advice is it's a little more tricky for me to navigate because I don't want to make it sound like you're not allowed to be friends with me or anything. But I also think that sometimes people get too attached to growing the relationship that they make with people at events really quickly. I would liken it to going to a speed dating event. And the next day, someone asks you to move in with them. Like, it's just too intense too quickly. And I understand that this probably has been more of my experience in the last few years because I have a podcast, I have a conference, I have a large Facebook community. So people see that if they can be biz besties with me, it's going to be really valuable for them. They know that I have an extensive network. They know that there's opportunity for them in being my biz bestie. And I totally understand that. And I'm not saying I don't want new biz besties. But when I meet people for the first time, and then within the first 10 days of meeting them, they are almost like hassling me a lot, like there's the follow-up the next day, which I love, right? And I do that myself. If I go to an event and I meet some people and I am really interested in maintaining that relationship, I will often sit down the next day and send follow-up DMs and say, it was so lovely to meet you, just sending you a DM so that we're connected. If you ever want to catch up again, let me know, or, just something nice and little. So I definitely encourage you to follow up within 2 to 3 days of meeting someone. But I have also experienced where then 2 days later, they've said, by the way, I've put it on my vision board that I'm going to speak at your conference because I loved the idea of that. Or I would, if you ever need speakers for your virtual conference, please do let me know. I would happily volunteer, right? Or if you ever want to interview me for your podcast, I would love to talk about XYZ. So they're telling me within the first 3 days, like what they want to get out of me. Or they're not telling me what they want to get out of me, but they just love bombing me and they start referring to me as their business bestie or their new biz bestie, or they're putting a lot of pressure on me to reciprocate this intensity of friendship from the very beginning. And I think it's really important to remember that relationships still need to develop quite naturally. Yes, you can take the lead on instigating conversation and nurturing that relationship, but there's a big difference between instigating a catch up here and there versus putting pressure on that person to be your new best friend straight away. And, a lot of that attachment to getting something out of it, that attachment to this being a really amazing friendship can give the other person the ick, right? It's the same as like you go on a speed date with someone and you're really interested in them, but then if they ask you to move in the very next day, there's something wrong, right? It's like, oh, what's going on here? What's their hidden agenda? And so just pay attention to the level of attachment that you have to that relationship or that friendship really growing quickly. And also, once you've met them and you've got them in your network, do you then fall back into that mindset of, okay, what can I get out of this? What can I get out of this? Instead, allow the relationship to grow naturally. And remember that if someone that you've met, you really get excited about that friendship or that relationship, it's because they're so successful, or if it's because they, have all of these events, they're going to be busy doing that stuff, right? Now, I'm not saying I'm busy. I'm definitely not busy, but I do find that I like a loosey-goosey kind of friendship first. And if it develops as we go, it develops. And also, don't underestimate the value of a loosey-goosey connection. A loosey-goosey connection can still be very valuable to you. It's someone that you can ask a question of, or, in 6 months' time when you're launching your book, you can send them a free copy. That's still really valuable. And, being connected with people simply because you met an event, you hit it off, you followed up, and you've touched base every 2 months isn't necessarily less valuable than you became instant best friends and you met every single week from there. Because the chances of every person that you get excited about meeting being willing to do that with you is pretty low. The other thing I would also say in relation to that is it can be also disempowering you, because the reason you're so attached to being connected to that person is because you think they will be able to grow your business really well. And it almost is like putting the results of your business, the growth of your business in the hands of someone else, because you have convinced yourself that you need someone else to endorse you, or you need a bunch of people to share you, or you need to be on a bunch of other people's podcasts. If you want to have a bunch of podcasts that have you on them, start a podcast. Pick yourself. Stop waiting to be chosen. And yes, I do understand that there are some amazing stories about people who met someone and then that person shared it and then their business went viral. But that's the exception. It's not the rule. And if you're relying on that and you're attached to that being the outcome, often you come across as really clingy and really needy, and the very person who is most likely to endorse you is now not likely to endorse you because you love bomb them, because you overwhelmed them. I've had people say to me, like straight out of the gate, that they want to speak at my conference. The moment I say I have a conference, I see people's eyes light up, and then they're telling me over and over again that they want to be a speaker at my conference. In essence, it makes it sound like the only reason they want to be friends with me is because they think I'm going to make them a speaker. And how does that make me feel as a human? It makes me feel gross. It makes me feel used. And I have had friendships and relationships in the past where I have been used. And so I'm pretty alert to that kind of thing. And so I just encourage you to allow those things to progress organically. Take back the power of where the growth of your business is going to come from. It comes from you. It doesn't come from one random person endorsing you. And just pay attention to the pressure that you may inadvertently be putting on new connections that you make from growing your network. The final piece of advice that I have is that sometimes it's better to just pay to be in the room. Now, this comes from two things. Number one is that I have definitely been to my fair share of free events where the connections that I made ended up fizzling very quickly because it was a free event. The people who were there were going to a lot of free events because they were a bit hesitant about committing to their business. And so I ended up spending a lot of time doing things, having conversations with people, recording new podcast episodes that never actually eventuated into anything. And I did see a direct connection to that happened more often at free events than at paid events. So I once went to a free in-person event where we were encouraged to introduce ourselves in a way that would allow people to invite us onto their podcasts or whatever it might be. And as a result of that, I was invited to do podcast interviews with 5 people. And so I did those interviews and only 2 of them ever made it onto the internet. So I wasted hours of my time doing podcast interviews with people who never published my podcast because they never actually published their podcast altogether. And so sometimes when it's an investment to be in the room, whether that investment is big or small, that makes a big difference to the people that you are networking with. It makes a big difference, not necessarily to the caliber of person, but the commitment of the person, the extent to which the person is investing in themselves and their business. And so I don't go to a lot of free events these days. I don't even really go to like conferences that are $79 a ticket because I know they're running them at a loss. So therefore there's going to be a hard upsell. And if it's only $79 to be there, you're going to have a lot of dabblers in the room. And I don't necessarily find those connections as helpful or long lasting. And that can simply be because those people are testing the waters of having an online business, or they aren't necessarily invested in applying what it is that they're learning. They are trying something out. It's free. Why not come along? And the example that I have is I went to a free event, and as part of that event, I was invited to be on 5 different people's podcasts, and it was an in-person event. And so I felt like I really built a connection with those people, and it was great to be invited on their podcasts. But out of the 5 that I recorded, only 2 of them ever got published. And the other 3 never even launched their podcasts. And whilst I am not saying that only people who can spend money are committed, I am saying that the people that you meet at events where you are all investing in the growth of your business often are the people who have the strongest sense of follow through. And that has absolutely been my experience of the difference between going to paid events versus going to free events. Being in the room can mean like buying tickets to conferences or buying tickets to networking events, but it can also be buying from the people that you want to add to your network. So I am far more likely to remember someone's business if they are in one of my programs, if they have come to conference, if they have worked with me as a client. Now, that's not necessarily, fair. I totally understand that, but it's just who I am as a human and how my brain works. If I have helped someone to build their business and build up their offers or work on their messaging, I'm far more likely to remember them when someone asks me, do you know a graphic designer who can help me with a redesign? Or do you know someone who can help me with, letting go of some limiting beliefs? I'll be far more likely to recommend the people that I have worked with as clients. I think sometimes there's a hesitation to pay to work with someone because of that old school patriarchal kind of model of business that's a hierarchy. So I know that old school business had that principle, like if someone buys from you, you can't buy from them. And if you want someone to buy from you, you can never buy from them because you need to stay in the power position of being the authority. But that doesn't apply these days, and it definitely doesn't apply to me. I have people who buy from me and then I buy from them, or the other way around. And it's because I don't see there is a power position necessary in order to buy from someone. I buy from people online because they have a skill set or an approach or something that I want to learn from them, but I don't see them as better than me or more important than me or anything along those lines. And they don't necessarily need to be making more money than me either. And it's the same way for people who buy from me. They're not buying from me because I'm in some way better than them. They're buying from me because I have great consent-based marketing strategy that they want to learn. They're buying from me because they see value in accessing my zone of genius. One person is not better than the other or higher than the other in some random hierarchy. We have different skill sets, different zones of genius, and we pay each other to access those zones of genius and those skill sets. And it's exactly the same with attending conferences. I get pitched by people all of the time to be speakers for the Hearts in a Business conference. And my number one response, my default response to anyone who says they want to be speaker at conference is buy a ticket. Now, I say it really nicely. I say to them, yeah, I would love to see you be a speaker at conference one day. The best thing that you can do is to get to really know the community and experience the conference for yourself. Here's how to buy a ticket. And more than half of the people that reach out and say they want to speak at conference don't even reply if I say buy a ticket. They don't even reply to that. Another huge portion of people, like at least a quarter, would reply and say, I don't go to conferences as an attendee. And I think that that actually comes from that old school model of business. It comes from this sense that if I go as an attendee, I'll never be a speaker, because somehow the people who buy the tickets are the lower and the people who speak on stage are the higher. That is not how I run my conference. Absolutely not. And in fact, I was approached by a very, very successful business owner who owned a multi-million-dollar business and sold it and now has started a different business in more service-based business offering. And I sent her the same default response. I was a bit of a fangirl. I did second guess myself, but I sent her the same default response and she didn't answer at first. I followed up and I even offered her a little discount to come along as a ticket holder with every intention of if she indicated she was going to buy a ticket or she bought a ticket, I was actually going to ask her to be a speaker. I was a huge fangirl. I'd never seen her speak before, but I loved her previous business and I was just super stoked that she'd reached out to me. But when I followed up, she said, look, I'm really looking to build my speaker portfolio right now. I'm not in the space to attend conferences. I'm not looking to buy tickets to go to these things. I am looking to speak. And I didn't ask her to be a speaker. And I have no regrets about that. To be honest with you, I was really disappointed in the response. I would assume that if you want to be a speaker at conferences around Australia, that you would understand that conferences around Australia need ticket holders and supporting those events is going to support the longevity of those events. It's fine. Heart-Centered Business Conference in person is sold out for this year. And I think that we're now at the stage where it will sell out within the week of tickets going on sale every time now. So I don't need to have a big name speaker endorse the conference in that way or anything anymore anyway, so it's fine. But I really find it fascinating how people respond to it. In fact, actually, before Heart-Centered Virtual Business Conference last year, the conference was in November, I had an opportunity for people to apply to be a speaker, and we had over 400 applications. And those applications, I went through every single one, and I invited 2 people to be speakers at virtual conference last year in November, but every single person who applied was also invited to attend. And when I told them that they hadn't been successful, I let them know that they could buy a ticket. I gave them a very generous discount coupon to attend. And I said, like, it's a really great way to get to know the event and the community and the kind of vibe. And I still have your details on file for next year. And out of over 400 people that I sent that email to, 6 bought a ticket. 6. And out of the 6 that bought a ticket, 2 of them are speaking at this year's Heart-Centered Virtual Business Conference. I didn't choose anyone who didn't buy a ticket. And the reason why I didn't was because that speaks volumes about how they perceive business. Is it a hierarchy or is it a flat structure? And it also, like, it just gives me such a direct indication of the extent to which people value the community and value being in the room over simply just valuing an opportunity to promote themselves, be on stage and hold the microphone. And so now I'm not assuming that every single person had the capacity to buy a ticket, or, you know, there were some people who replied and said, the dates actually don't work for me. And I didn't realize, you know, there were a lot of things that people reply with, and I totally understand people have different circumstances. But this is what I mean by sometimes it just pays to pay to be in the room. And I know that I'm not alone as a conference organizer. I also know that in my first 4 years of business, every single paid speaking opportunity that I got except for one came from buying a ticket to the event. There were conferences where it was a 2-day conference. I bought a ticket. I didn't know the organizer. I didn't know most of the speakers. I went because I saw a friend of mine was going, or someone that I really liked was going, or one of the speakers I recognized. I bought a ticket, and by the end of the second day, I was standing on stage being announced as a speaker for the following year. Because I took the time to buy a ticket, support the event, and be in the room. That created the opportunity for me to get to know the people in the room, to introduce myself to the organizer without any expectation of being asked to be a speaker, just simply like supporting them and saying you're doing an amazing job or something along those lines. I asked really good questions of the speakers, and every opportunity that there was to introduce myself, I did. Every opportunity there was to support other attendees, I did. So some of them had Facebook groups, and I was very active in those Facebook groups. I would take photos of every single speaker on stage and tag them on Instagram and say, oh my gosh, it's time for this person on stage. I'm super excited to hear from them. I used the conference hashtag. I promoted the conference. Even before I went to the event, I would share, I'm going to this event. Does anyone else want to come? And I would tag the conference organizer. Now, I'm not doing any of that through the lens of, I hope this gets me a spot as a speaker. I was doing it through the lens of genuinely wanting to support the event and of genuinely wanting to support the speakers. But it did result in befriending some of those speakers, getting speaking opportunities. I wasn't attached to it. It wasn't my intention, but that was the byproduct of it. And so it really does pay to be in the room. Now, that also happens to be your gift or opportunity for today, our first day of Tashmas. I have a ticket to the Heart-Centered Virtual Business Conference to give away. So if you've already got your ticket, you'll be able to gift it to a friend. If you haven't got your ticket yet, you'll be able to come along, and you only have a limited time to enter. This is not open to the end of Tashmas because Heart-Centered Virtual Business Conference is on the 6th of March. So you have until the 4th of March to come over to the post. I will link to it in the show notes of today's episode, where I am promoting Heart-Centered Virtual Business Conference. I've shared a coupon code that you can use to get a discounted ticket if you are unsuccessful in winning one. And I would love for you to come and share on that post in the comments, what is the number one thing that you would love to gain from coming to Heart-Centered Virtual Business Conference? So you might want to attend because you want to learn from the speakers. You might want to attend because you want to meet like-hearted peers and access a peer support network. You might want to attend because you're curious to see how online conferences are delivered. You might want to attend because you want to be a speaker one day. You want to learn from people who are speaking at conference. Whatever your reason is, I would love to hear it from you as to why you would love to attend Heart-Centered Virtual Business Conference. And on the 4th of March at 4 p.m, I will select a winner. If you are unsuccessful, please do use that coupon code to buy your ticket and grab that discount. I would love to see you there. Heart-Centered Virtual Business Conference is a really high connection online conference. It is not just a summit of free presentations that you would normally hear elsewhere. It is not sit and listen and stare at the screen and like completely lose all of your energy for the day. There is structured networking. There is opportunities for you to promote your business. We have practical ways that we support each other to grow our reach online. And as I said, we also do have opportunities for you to pitch to be a speaker. So something that I do each year, we've already done it for this virtual conference, is all ticket holders about 6 to 8 weeks before the event have the opportunity to pitch to be a speaker at the event. And it's called Pitch Fest and it's super fun. And we will do it again for in-person conference and virtual conference next year. And so one of the things that I would advise you to do is if you do want to speak at that event, make sure you get your ticket nice and early so that you can be part of the Pitch Fest experience. And I would love to see you there. If you have any questions about virtual conference, you are welcome to ask on DM or send me an email. And all of the instructions and the details of what you need to do to enter are at tashcorbin.com/381, which is where you'll find the show notes of today's episode as well. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. As I said, for day one, it was a longer podcast for today. They will be shorter from here, but I'm very excited for daily podcast episodes to be dropping between now and my birthday. I hope you found this super valuable, and until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now. Would you like more tips, tools, and resources to help you grow your heart-centered business? Head to tashcorbin.com today.